In this video, I'm going to walk you through my process of building a routine for maximum performance as an online coach. This is the process that I use to build a routine from scratch for maximum productivity and maximum output to make the most out of each week. So right now, I'm currently in a very interesting season of my life. I'm officially launching a new business with a new offer that I've been working on the back end for the past 7 months. I'm getting married, so I'm in the process of planning the wedding, and I'm prioritizing my health, currently doing a cut and getting back in the gym after dealing with a back injury and pretty busy working season where the gym took a bit of a backseat. So as you can imagine, there's a lot going on in my life right now. And what you're looking at here is one of my previous routines. So I'm going to show you how I build this from scratch with my current constraints and my current goals. The thing is that we are humans, which means that we have limited resources. As entrepreneurs, our resources are time, energy, attention, and money primarily. So having a good system like this one that allows me to maximize my limited resources to get the best ROI has been crucial in my career as an entrepreneur and as an online coach. And the process that I'm going to walk you through is what I use to build an optimal routine that ends up looking something like this, that allows me to take care of all of the areas that I just spoke about without dropping the ball and hit my current goals in health, wealth, and relationships. So with that being said, let's get straight into it. So what you're looking at right now is Google Calendar. This is my tool of preference, and since most online coaches already use Google Workspace tools in a way or another, such as Gmail, Drive, Slides, Sheets, and of course Calendar, that's the one that I would recommend and that I've seen work best, but you can still apply a lot of the stuff that I'm going to share here with the calendar of your preference. I just personally really love Google Calendar for a lot of the features that it has, how simple it is to use, and the integrations with all of the other workspace tools like Gmail, Drive, all of the ones that I previously mentioned. So I'm going to walk you through the process that I used to build my routine once Google Calendar has been set up properly. So how I go from having an empty calendar like this one to then having the end result like here, right? So this video is all about how I'm going to just build that routine once Google Calendar has been set up properly. So if you want to see how to actually set it up, like literally how to go into the settings, some pro tips and shortcuts to maximize the actual tool as much as possible, check out this video. And I'm also going to drop the link in the description below where I break down the tool and I show you how to set it up from scratch. Okay, so right now what I'm going to use, this is actually an account that I created for tutorials. So this is not the actual account that I'm using. This is the one that I am using. So this is just an example of my previous routine. I'm actually in the process of restructuring everything, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to show you, if you're starting from scratch and if you've never done this, how I would go about doing that. Okay, so this literally just completely brand new Google Calendar that I just set up the settings that I shared in that video that I just mentioned, that I'm dropping the link in the description as well on how to set up properly. And I'm going to start building the routine. So the first thing that I always like to do is I like to first create a container. So as you can see here in my previous, or in the actual calendar that I use for my user, I have a bunch of containers and different calendars. The reason of why I do that is because at the end of the day, the routines change based on the season that you're at. Of course, the season that I'm going through right now, where I'm getting the business off the ground, in the process of getting married and in a cut, is a very different season than the one that I was, for example, a year ago, where I was working as a client success manager for a 7-figure company, where I was just recently starting to date my now fiance, and I was in pretty good shape. I wasn't in a cut, so my routine looked completely different. So at the end of the day, as entrepreneurs, our routines evolve, and I want to have a tool that allows me to evolve with that. So that's why I have multiple containers and why I recommend doing that. So again, at the end of the day, we go through different seasons, and I like to optimize each season, each month, and each year, optimize for certain specific things, right? I have different goals. I have different things that change in my routine. So I want to constantly be changing it and make sure that I'm always optimizing for the maximum output and productivity for that current season. So what I always like to do is create a container before I modify my main calendar. So usually the main calendar is the one that you have connected to like Calendly and all of your tools, the one that actually people that book calls can see. So before I mess with that, I want to first create that container to see how the routine would look like. And then once I have something that I really like, then I migrate that to the main calendar. So right now, again, this is empty in all of the calendars. Right now, there's only one calendar that was created, the tasks and the birthdays, but like the actual only calendar is this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first create the container. The way that you do that is you go to settings, you come here where it says add calendar, create a new calendar. And I just like to call it container. And for the current season, I'm just going to call it Q3, Q4, 2025, because this is probably the one that I'm going to be using for the reminder of this quarter, Q3, and then for all of Q4 of this year. So I'm just going to create the calendar. It's going to take a couple minutes here. So once it's created, you'll get this prompt and you just have to go back, and now you're going to be able to see it here. You can choose any color you want. So for this, I'm just going to use one that really stands out. I'm going to use the yellow. So once you create the container, this is what it's going to look like, the new calendar. And I always like to start doing this first and create this container before I modify the main calendar. Since the main calendar is the one that is already connected to Calendly and the one that people can use to book a call with me, if I start putting a lot of stuff there when I'm creating a new routine from scratch or changing things around for me to just visually see what I would like my new routine to look like, if I start doing that in the main calendar, then it starts blocking some of the times in Calendly, some of the events, for example, where sometimes I just want first to have a visual representation for myself before committing to the changes. So that's why I like to first create the container. That's what we're going to do from scratch. So you just go to settings, create the new calendar. It's going to appear here. And it is important to know that Google Calendar automatically arranges the calendars based on the name that you used. So for example, here I only have one, but if let's just say, I show you here, in my previous one, the reason why I have a lot of them, the reason why I changed like the names and I add like 0.0 or 0.1 is so that I can see them in the order that I like. If I look at this one was like back in 2023 and it looked very different to what I have today, for example. So I want to change the name to make sure that it's always showing me closest to the one at the top, the most recent one. Again, this is going to be the main one. This is the one that is already connected to Calendly that has a bunch of my meetings there. So I don't want to mess with this one yet until I can make sure that I can commit to the changes that I'm going to put here. So that's why right now there's only one. So doesn't make that big of a difference. But if you have multiple calendars, it is good to know that based on the name that you use, it's going to be arranged. So I just recommend if you want this to be at the top, you can just add like here in the name that you can change. You can just add like a 0.0 or something like that, and it automatically changes it and it puts it all the way in the top. As you can see, it actually moved it on top of birthday. So you can do that, play with the name so that it moves it to the top, but the main one is always going to be kept at the top. So as I shared right now, I'm using the tutorials account I created, which is why I don't have multiple calendars here. But if I show you my actual calendar, as you can see, there's a bunch of calendars and containers, specifically containers here. And I've just decided to keep them here to see how my routine has been evolving through different seasons. So that way it allows me to always rearrange and change by name just to make sure that I can see at the top the one that I'm currently using. And this is just good for me as feedback, right? Because I can look back and see what worked and what didn't work from previous seasons. So for example, I remember that back in 2023, in August, I had a very productive routine. And if I go back and look at it, I can see why. I didn't have a lot of commitments. I wasn't dating back then. So it was like just pretty much deep work all the time before I launched the offer that I had back in the day. So it was a very productive season, and I can always go back and I took a lot of the things that worked for me there that I'm using to build what I have right now. So I just like to keep them there as just that feedback, because at the end of the day, what gets measured gets improved. So if I can always go back and see how it has been evolving, it allows me to just keep improving. So that's why I like to keep them there, but you can always delete them. If you don't want to keep using one of the calendars that you created, you can always take it out, and that way you can just keep your calendar clean and just pretty much keep the stuff that you want there. So going back to the tutorials account, which is what you're looking at here, the first thing that I like to do once I have the container is turn off all of the other calendars. So all of the events that I'm going to create are going to be placed in the actual container calendar right now. And the first thing that I always like to start with is my sleep. So they've been doing a lot of research recently analyzing the impact of sleep, nutrition, and exercise when it comes to someone's performance during the day. And they've realized over and over again that sleep is by far the most important factor when it comes to performance. And especially for creative people like us, for knowledge workers, like business owners with online coaching businesses, where we're creating content, having coaching calls, like entrepreneurs who are doing a lot of that type of creative work and using their brains to get paid. This is super, super important. Like working on a VSL, creating content, hopping on a sales call, hopping on a coaching call. Sleep can have a huge impact on the output that we get for the time that we invest in any of those things. And the impact could be exponential. That's the thing here. Like, it's not by a small magnitude, it could be huge. So the first thing that I always like to do is I want to start with sleep, especially in seasons where I'm doing a lot of creative work. I want to protect that. It is crucial for me. And I've also seen this have a huge impact with people that I've worked with and implemented this. So when it comes to sleep, the most important thing that you want to look for is quality and quantity. Just to oversimplify things, and I can create another video going deeper into sleep later. If you're interested in that, just let me know in the comments below. But when it comes to quantity, you want to aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Now, something important to mention here is that hours in bed do not equate to hours of sleep. And also, these are not like written in stone rules. Like at the end of the day, each person is a bit different. So if you already know what works for you, just stick to that. But just overall, general rule of thumb, that's what they've seen works better. So just aiming for that and remembering that time in bed doesn't equate in hours sleep. So at least for me personally, I always like to aim for an extra minus plus 30-minute buffer in bed to hit the actual goal that I have for when I'm asleep. And when it comes to quality, one of the most important things is how consistent you are with your bedtime and with your wake up time, and also having a good wind down routine to make sure that you get good quality sleep. So I'm going to make another video going deeper into sleep, but for now, I'm just going to keep it super simple. Quantity and quality, aiming for 7 to 9 hours and making sure that I'm as consistent as possible. So the first thing I'm going to do in my calendar is I'm going to actually create an event in my container with my sleep. So right now I'm going to start putting it here. So I'm going to create an event. I can just click here and type sleep. And then I'm going to go here into making it daily. And it's going to be right now what works better for me at the current season based on what I've been testing. I'm going to be aiming for 8 hours, and which is going to probably give me around 7.5 hours of sleep. So 8 hours in bed, which is going to give me like 7.5 hours of sleep. So for me personally, waking up as early as possible is what has been proven to work better, especially in seasons where I'm prioritizing business. The thing is that I've seen, especially in a period like the one that I'm in right now, where I'm using a lot of, or doing a lot of like creative work with building the product, hopping on coaching calls and creating content now that I'm going to start prioritizing that as well. I do want to protect the sleep. So I like to aim for at least the 8 hours. And based on just my routine right now, in order for me to be able to cover all of the other areas, the thing that I know that I can consistently stick with is 80 to 90% of the time is going to bed at 9:30 p.m. Because there was a season, and I can actually show it probably here, back in 2023, where I pretty much didn't have any commitments. It was just me, and I was waking up at 4:30, 4:45, and I was like super productive and I loved it. But because I wasn't dating and I wasn't like pretty much meeting with anyone, I was going to bed at 7:30 or 8. So I was able to commit to that and sustain that for long periods of time. But here, just because of the season that I'm at right now and the different commitments that I have, like going to bed earlier than 9:30 or 9 is a bit complicated. So this is one that I know that I can stay consistent with 80 to 90% of the time, which is what I'm looking for. Because at the end of the day, it's not about being perfect, but just thinking of the current situation and the season that I'm at with my life right now, and knowing that one of the most important things is how consistent I am with the bedtime and the wake up time, and making sure that I hit it consistently and get those 7.5, 8 to 8 hours of actual sleep. 9 p.m. or 9:30 plus minus a 30-minute buffer is something that I can commit to. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to do that waking up at 5:30. So I just create the event and make it a daily event, and pretty much now I have that every single day. Even during the weekends, I'm going to try to stick to this as much as possible. So now, once I have my sleep, I'm going to start building from my morning. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add my morning routine. So I'm actually going to go to this week so that I can start building in like a full week. So my goal at this current season is my business. That's what I'm optimizing for. And I'm currently in a season of my life where that is my priority. So I've been testing personally and also with a lot of founders that I've been working with in the past. And what I've seen for most of the people as well is that working first thing in the morning, as soon as I wake up, and getting the most important thing of the day done in the first couple hours is one of the most productive things that I've seen. And the amount of output that I'm able to get, and most people are able to get when they do this, is insane. Especially if you're waking up early when most people are still asleep, and if you don't allow yourself to get distracted or interrupted, what you're able to get done in those first couple hours is insane in terms of the output that you can get if you plan this properly. So right now, my goal is from the moment that I wake up until I'm sitting in my desk working to be as fast as possible. So I'm going to add here a 15-minute event that is just going to be wake up plus morning routine. I'm going to make that daily as well. So pretty much what happens is, or I know just based on, because I've been doing this for a while already, that currently takes me 15 minutes from the moment that I wake up to the moment that I can be sitting in my desk working. It's one of the most amazing things in terms of productivity, at least for me personally, and for some of the people that I've tested this with, because at the end of the day, again, I think it's really important. Something that I hear a lot of the time is a lot of people, creators, coaches, or whoever is recommending on how to optimize your routine, they're all, or everyone is just saying things about you should this thing in the morning, you should do this thing in the morning, or you should, like all of these shoots. But at the end of the day, it really depends. And the whole point of peak performance is getting your biology to work for you instead of against you, and optimizing for what you are prioritizing in your life and getting the most outputs for the inputs which are limited that you have. So again, there are seasons in life. Some seasons you're pushing hard with business. Some seasons you're maintaining with business and pushing hard on other areas of life. So I think that it's really important to be very conscious about it and then build a routine around whatever you're optimizing for, which is why I've had different variations of my routines in the last couple of years. If I show you here, for example, if it was like 2024, I was working out first thing in the morning. Yeah, why? Because I was working as a CSM back then. And then the moment that I just connected to like Slack and my coaching goals and all of that stuff, like back then, I wasn't able to hit the gym once I connected, which usually happened at 8:30 in the morning. I was like online. Like by then it was very hard for me to disconnect before 7 p.m. So then if I wanted to hit my fitness goals, I had to optimize for that, right? But then again, seasons change. So that's why I recommend first, before you just listen to anyone like you should work out first thing in the morning, you should do this. What are you optimizing for? What are your goals? Be very conscious about it, and then optimize your routine for whatever gives you the most amount of outputs. So right now, where my goal is business, the thing that gives me the most amount of output and allows me to be the most productive is just to be working as soon as possible. And that's what this allows me to do. And always trying to prioritize, because when it comes to prioritization, it means that some things are more important than others. You want to prioritize, meaning that you want to put first, before anything else happens, the thing that is most important for you in your current season and the thing that will get you closer to your goal. So right now, I'm in a season of building my business where my priority and what I want to optimize for in my life is for maximum output with my business. That's what I'm going to prioritize and what I'm going to start doing first thing in the morning every single day. And that's just something important to address. Defining something as a priority doesn't mean that other things are not important or that don't happen in the day. It's just at which order. So even when I'm prioritizing or optimizing, which means that I'm putting most of my resources for maximum output towards a specific area, which in this case is my business, that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop doing other things like taking care of myself, exercising, my relationships, time with my fiance, and all of that stuff. It's just in which order are the things going to happen. It's a whole concept of the one thing. Being able to identify what is the one thing that will make everything else irrelevant or necessary with your current goals and the current season in your life right now. And to me right now, it's getting my business fully up and running. Of course, my fiance and the wedding, those things are extremely important for me, even more than the business. But if I want to provide for my family and give my wife the life that she deserves, that requires money. And money comes from having a profitable business that is aligned with my goals. So right now, putting as many resources into my business as I am launching a new offer and making that a priority is what will allow me to then hit my goals in the other areas of my life, which is why I'm going to be optimizing for the business and getting the most out of it. So this is what, after years of testing, I've seen works best for me in the seasons that I'm pushing hard with my business. So I just wanted to share with you the thought process when you're doing this. You should not just look at the video and think to yourself like, oh, just because Eduardo is recommending to start with work first thing in the morning and what he's seen work better for a lot of the founders that he's worked with, I should do that as well. Again, it depends on what is your current priority, right? So always optimize for your priority. And ideally, if you've already tested in the past, which is why it's important to keep, in my opinion, like the containers here so that you can always look back to see what worked when you were going through different seasons. But optimize for your current season and what has worked for you in the past already. And just ideally getting the first thing or the thing that is most important that will get you closer to your goals out of the way. Take care of it first thing in the morning. So I like to write things down, what I'm going to be doing literally in the actual events, so I don't have to think. Right now, I know that it takes me 15 minutes from the moment that I wake up to be at my desk working. So the current process that I follow is I wake up, No snooze. Right now, it's pretty automatic. I wake up without an alarm because I've already been doing this for a while. My body just got used to it. But I still leave the alarm on just in case, and I leave it far from my bed. So if it does go off, I have to stand up to turn it off, which forces me to be fully awake. Then I just drink my electrolytes and creatine that I have ready in my desk, and I leave them there the night before so I don't have to waste time going to the kitchen. Then I log in my weight. I use the restroom, brush my teeth. So by the time that I sit down and I start working on my desk, I'm fully awake, and it takes me 15 minutes to do all of that. And then I have my first deep work block. And I like to think in deep work blocks. So when it comes to actual cognitively demanding work, the optimal window is 90 minutes to 2 hours without any breaks. After that, there start to be diminishing returns for every minute that you spend. So this basically means that in terms of output, what you get is way more efficient if you have, let's say, 2 deep work blocks of 90 minutes with an active recovery block in between versus a 3-hour block, just like straight doing the 3 hours. So this is the one block that I'm going to do the first thing in the morning that I want to protect as if my life and my business depends on it. Because if I can get the most important thing of the day done first thing in the morning, every single day, before anyone else wakes up, before anyone interrupts me, like even if something happens, if there is a fire that throws me off, I already moved the needle forward. So especially if you're waking up early and you do this first thing in the morning, it's very unlikely that there are going to be fires that you have to attend at that time. So that's why I really like to start with this, always doing a deep work block as soon as I wake up. So I'm just going to call it deep work, creating this event. And that's pretty much the first 2 hours of the day after I've woken up and just went through my morning routine. Just deep work, uninterrupted. And here I'm going to be doing the most important task of the day, the thing that is going to have the biggest impact right now with the business. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be doing that from Monday through Friday. So if I go here and I just click every weekday, Monday to Friday, it's just going to automatically put it there. Then after that, I like to take a break to do some cardio and exercises for my back that I need to work on right now, and then get changed and then have breakfast. So I'm just going to put an hour block for the back exercises plus cardio. And then I'm going to do that also from Monday through Friday. And then just change real quick. Change, just a quick shower and change. Also do that from Monday through Friday. And then have breakfast, which I like to just put here like 45 minutes. Like I love cooking, and this is like a really good time for me to just recharge, and works really well as a good recovery block. So by the next block that I go back to work, I'm like really recharged and pretty much ready to go. And then I commute to the office, and I do that every single day. And I also do that from Monday through Friday. So usually by the time that I'm done with my deep work, I'm super hungry. So it works really well for me to go into this break. And now something that I actually just realized, I was doing this in my previous routine. I'm actually going to make a change. So I'm just going to show you how easy it is to move things around, even if you already started implementing something here. So one of the changes that I wanted to make to start testing is actually have my breakfast first. So I'm just going to move that with the following events, and then move the cardio for right after that. And then shower and change, and then commute to the office. So this is actually one of the main changes that I wanted to test right now. So I'm glad it happened, just to show you that even if once you start doing this, you can just play around with the containers and with the blocks. So yeah, pretty much at the end of the deep work block, I'm super hungry. So it works really well for me to just have a breakfast, like disconnect, then get a little bit of exercise. And after breakfast works great for me to do a little bit of cardio in my back exercise, just shower and change, and then head to the office. So right now I'm going to be doing that every single week, and that's what every morning is going to look like. And the reason of why I'm doing this first deep work block at home is because I want the least amount of friction to work from the moment that I wake up to the moment that I'm on my desk. And once I'm in the office, I don't want to have to leave the office. So I just prefer to check off everything, or as much as possible. So by the time that I am already got to the office, I already moved the needle with the business and with the most important thing. I took care of myself. And so even if after this, like the day goes completely off, like I already won in the business and I already won in just personally with the health, right? So that's what's been working really, really great for me. Just moving as much friction, get the deep work done, breakfast, some exercise, and then head to the office. So something that I started doing recently is I started splitting my days into days with meetings and days with no meetings. So before, I was trying to keep every day the same, where I had the mornings reserved for deep work and noon for reactive work. But there were a couple things that I realized after testing that. Once I get traction personally with a project, when I'm doing deep work, I can go all day. And I realized that as soon as I go into reactive mode, whether that's taking calls, checking emails, or replying to messages, that throws me completely off. And it's hard for me to get back on track with the deep work and the flow that I had, because there's, at the end of the day, a lot of stuff that you cannot control when you start interacting with other people. So the other thing is that since I have clients from all over the world, a bunch of them are in Europe, for example, it was hard for me to coordinate times later in the day. And since I prioritize my clients and the delivery above everything else, and right now my program is a fully personalized and one-on-one experience, I decided to have days that are fully open for calls and reactive work to be available, or to have more availability for my clients, my team, etc. So those days, I'm going to do that. I'm going to have a full open calendar. And then there's going to be other days that I'm going to have fully blocked for deep work. So pretty much the way that I decided to do that is Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I take calls. So those days, well, first of all, the first block of the day, every single day, I protect that. Like no matter what, I do at least deep work. Even if for the rest of the day, I'm going to be taking calls all day, I already moved the needle forward. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are the days I'm going to be taking meetings. So I'm just going to make it an all-day event. I'm going to leave it free here, because if you select this to be busy, it's going to block Calendly availability. But if you just leave it as free, it's something like you can just see visually on your end, but it doesn't block anything in Calendly or in any of the scheduling software that you use. And then I'm just going to make sure that this repeats custom on Wednesdays and Fridays. So if I do this and I save it, as you can see now I have meeting days. This is just a good visual representation for me. And then I'm going to duplicate this event, and I'm going to call it no meetings days. And I'm going to change this to Thursdays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So right now I'm currently working Saturdays as well, or at least half a day. And that way I know, just a good visual reference for me to know which days I'm taking meetings and which days I'm not doing that. So then Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are going to look pretty much the same. Then Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, well, Tuesdays and Thursdays pretty much the same, and Saturday a little bit different. So pretty much once I get to the office, my calendar is going to be open for calls and for meetings. So there's going to be blocks where we're going to be having the group calls. So right now I'm in the process of actually conducting a survey with the community just to see for the group calls when is the time that's going to work best for the majority of the people in the community. So that's still yet to be defined, but a lot of the one-on-one calls that we have blocked and the group calls are going to literally happen throughout the entire day: Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I have to finish just defining the actual blocks of like when we're going to have the group calls and when we're going to leave open the time for the other one-on-one calls. But this is pretty much what the availability is going to look like, and then I'm going to have some breaks in between. So right now, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I'm not going to do any other workouts except for the cardio in the morning, and then I'm going to be hitting the gym 4 days a week: Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, because again, I am prioritizing business. So yes, I'm also taking care of my health, and right now just I want minimum effective dose to hit my goals, which right now is pretty much just cutting, getting rid of fat, and maintaining muscle. So for me, 4 days a week works well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, where I don't have any meetings. So that way I'm not in a rush, or it doesn't take time away from me being able to just do meetings or client work. So that's what pretty much, again, right now I'm just going to leave it open because I still have to define how that's going to look like. But pretty much Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays is going to be fully open for me to meet with my clients and do client work and also have the group calls. And I'm going to have some breaks in between, but it just really depends on once we define with the rest of the community when are going to be the best times for them for the group call so the majority of people can join. And then once we define that, I'll finish like actually putting with detail the times that I'm going to have my breaks and everything. But for reactive work, and that's what I was saying about the difference is when you're actually doing deep, cognitively demanding work, that's when you start seeing a lot of diminishing returns after a certain amount of time. But for me personally, because I've been taking like coaching calls, like taking more than 3,000 coaching calls in the last 5 years I've been doing this. So it's pretty straightforward for me. So it's not as draining to do those things. So I can have like back-to-back calls for 4, 5, 6 hours, and I don't have diminishing returns in terms of the output that I'm able to get from the time that I spend during those calls. I still like to, of course, put some breaks during the day just to make sure that I stay with like high energy and I'm showing up as best as possible for all of my clients. But it's something that it doesn't drain me just because I have the reps, and it's just like way easier for me to do today after all of the reps of what I've done versus, for example, like actual deep work. If I'm like for 2 hours straight working on like a piece of content on VSL for the course, for the program, or working on like a tracking sheet, or like something is like very cognitively demanding, after 2 hours I do get drained and I start having diminishing returns. So I do need to have those breaks. So that's why I like to just, for the meetings, I can just leave it pretty open. And then for the deep work block days, I do want to separate it and be very clear right now on what that's going to look like. So then for Tuesdays and Thursdays, what it's going to look like is I'm going to have 2-hour long deep work blocks that I'm going to do on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then I'm going to just duplicate that, and then we're gonna do this one here, and then we're gonna have a 30-minute break in between, which we're also gonna actually do. I mean, just something really quick that you can do is, if you already have the event set up with the custom frequency of Tuesdays, Thursdays, you can just duplicate it. So for example, this one, so I'm just gonna change it to break. And then I'm just going to change the time. Starts at 12 and it's just 30 minutes long. So that way it's just simpler. So this is what Tuesdays and Thursdays are going to look like. So by 2:30 p.m., I've already going to have 3 deep work blocks of 2 hours each. So pretty much 6 hours of deep work. And usually what I do those days, I don't even turn on my phone. I don't check emails, because again, as soon as I get distracted or as soon as I go online, it can really throw me off. So I try to protect not turning on, like not getting into reactive state and being completely unreachable until at least by the time that I'm done with the current deep work block. Something that I've realized is recently that I usually go through an energy dip. Like I crash at around like 4 p.m. So I'm trying to optimize for the moments where my energy is at its peak to perform deep work, because before I was having my workouts here. I can actually show you what that looked like. I was working out here and then I was like having the crash here. So now I'm like, again, because I'm prioritizing for work, I'm changing that and trying to optimize for just working during my peaks and having my resting block, which is like the post-workout meal and right after I worked out. So just try to pair a break with my natural energy dip so that I can just leverage the times that I'm like at my peak, right? So then pretty much is just like commute to the gym. So I can just commute to gym, then workout. I'm trying to keep my workouts at an hour long, and then like commute. Usually if I commute to office and then lunch, and then this is going to repeat on Thursdays as well. This is what I meant about duplicating the events. Saves you having to go individually and do this for every event. So we can just do this and then lunch. And then usually at 5 p.m. is when my energy comes back up, especially if I did a workout and then I had lunch. Usually after that, and I mean, I did this while I naturally have like my dip in energy, it just helps me a lot. And that's what a lot of people say about when you want to plan your routine around your energy and not just like the actual time. Most people go through this cycle of like usually have when you wake up an energy peak, that then you go through an energy dip and then you have another smaller peak. That's usually the pattern that happens. And for me, it's like it became very, very obvious. Like at 3 to 4 p.m. I crash. Actually more around 3:30 to 4 p.m. I crash. It takes me like an hour. And then usually by 5:30 I'm back at it. So I'm gonna just optimize my routine for that. And probably going to try to do the same with the meetings and the client work. But at the end of the day, again, since it's one-on-one work, one-on-one that I'm doing with them, I would not just leave as much availability open as possible. And also, as I said, like it doesn't drain me, it doesn't require as much or as many cognitive resources for me to do one-on-one calls as it does to do like deep work. So that's why even if I have to take calls during those times, I'm still able to handle them pretty well. If that's what some of my clients need, like if that's the only time that they have available to meet, then I want to adapt and provide that availability for me to be able to serve them at the highest possible level and make it as convenient as possible for them. But we'll see if we're able to still plan for that on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I'm still going to do that. And then pretty much what I do here is like I have another hour and a half, and this can be a bit more of like reactive work. So replying on Slack, replying to emails, just like more reactive stuff. Ideally still no meetings these days. but just like taking care of the admin work that I have to take care of every single day. And then here, same thing, I want to do reactive work. So even those days, I mean, throughout the days, I'm still probably going to be way more available. Mondays, Thursdays, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But I still want to have at least one block where I'm not taking any meetings after 6 p.m. So I have at least those 30 minutes to an hour to just reply and close the loops and make sure that everyone is taken care of in one block. So I try to also treat replying, like clearing my inbox, as a deep work block. So I try to not be available all the time. My notifications are actually off. So that way, when I'm on, I'm on. And when I'm off, I'm off. When I'm replying, I'm focused, I'm replying. And when I'm focused on other things, I'm focused on other things. So I'm not being pulled in multiple directions. So I want to prioritize having a block for those things every single day. So I'm going to do the same thing for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So as you can see here, I'm giving myself like an hour and a half to do these things on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that way, if a bunch of it piled up, like emails primarily, so I'm always prioritizing like getting back to clients on Slack. So that is the first thing that I do in every reactive work. But sometimes I don't have enough time to clear my emails or WhatsApp messages, personal stuff. So I try to leave the bigger blocks here in case I have to get caught up with those things, but always prioritizing the work that I'm doing with the clients that I'm serving. So every single day I have at least that block. And then the last thing that I like to do is just to wrap up my day in a strategy session, which is framework, process, that I like to use every single day, just to look at how the day went, make sure that we're ready for the next day, just move stuff around to make sure that every single day we're focused and working on the stuff that is actually moving the needle forward. So this actually happens on a weekly, like every weekday. And then my cutoff time is 7 p.m. Another really important thing is having a cutoff time for me and also for most people that I've worked with, and trying to really stick to that, like religiously. So 7 p.m. I'm off, I turn off my computer, I leave the office, try to really separate that. And then usually from 7 p.m. till 9:30, this is just the time where I just have like dinner, prep next day, and relationships, which is usually just spending time with my fiance. And I mean, some days I do meal prep, like Wednesdays I do meal prep for Thursday and Friday. And then Sundays I do meal prep for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And Saturday I leave it open, usually go have lunch with my family. So this is just pretty much the block, what I do from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. every weekday. And that's pretty much how the routine looks like. Then Saturday, I mean, I'm still doing work. So I'm doing like similar to the deep work days. I'm doing like deep work here. Yeah, we can actually do that. I'm gonna just modify this and make it not just weekdays but also Saturdays, so I want to keep that the same. And then same thing with breakfast and the exercise and the cardio. Custom Saturday, done, save. Same thing with this. So my Saturday mornings are gonna look pretty similar. And then commute to the office, and then have another deep work block. So Saturdays, instead of having 3 deep work blocks, usually just gonna have 2. And then I'm gonna have the commuting to workout, commute to the gym, and usually having a longer workout session here. So I like to give myself like 2 hours. So like I can hit the sauna, just be a bit more chill and not so pressured here as like what I usually do during the workout in the week. I mean, I forgot to add here like just shower and change, but like usually takes me 15 minutes just to be a bit more specific, because the more specific I can be, the better. Helps me just to make sure that we are flowing through the day without having to think about it. And then just make this Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then it's usually just having lunch with my family, just be off. And then Sundays I like to take completely off, usually spend it with my fiance, family, just like chill, recover, and still do workout that day. Just don't want to have it like fully planned, because if we end up doing something Saturday and I end up waking up a bit later on Sunday or something like that, I just like to give myself that day like not have things planned, just to allow myself to have a bit more flexibility, but still have another workout that day. So those are like my 4 days that I hit the gym, and that's pretty much how the routine looks. So then once I have this in my container, then what I do is pretty much just duplicate it and migrate it to the main calendar. So the way that would look like is I would literally go to each event and I would just click on it, duplicate it, and then here I would change it to the main calendar. So what I do is for all of the blocks, all of the events that are that are static. So for example, deep work in my actual main calendar, I want to see exactly what I'm going to be working on during that week. So I don't want it to just say deep work. What I do is usually, and I can make another video about that, but I have strategy sessions that I do at the end of each day, and also a big block of strategy session, usually Saturday mornings, each and every single week, where I map out entirely what my week is going to look like. And I literally write down specifically what I'm going to be working on. So what I like to do is I just like to duplicate to the main event, like the actual, like the static blocks, and then the ones that say like deep work, again, it's just a container. So if I turn this off and if I look at my main calendar, this is one that's going to be connected to Calendly. So I don't want to have a block that says meetings with clients. I just leave that open. I just know that that's why I can check the container on or off just to see which are the ones that I usually use there. So I just duplicate all of the ones to that calendar that are like literally the containers, the ones that usually happen every day but that are not like going to change. So pretty much what I do is I just duplicate every single event into the main calendar, except for the actual deep work blocks and the meeting blocks, because I want to leave those open in my calendar for either the Calendly availability or for actually writing down in the main calendar what I'm going to be working on specifically during those blocks. So, and I do that and I plan that during my strategy sessions that I do on Saturday. So if I turn off the container, then this is what I'm left with. And I know that on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays that I have like the meeting days, the open slots are meeting blocks. And once we get clarity on like when the group calls are going to be, they're going to be here. And of course, with the recurring calls that I have with the clients are also going to be here. But I know there's the slots that I have available to meet with people. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I know that the open slots are times for deep work. So this is usually how I do it. First, put it on the container, then migrate it to the main calendar, the stuff that is not deep work and not like just open slots for meetings. If there are recurring meetings, I do put them there. And this is pretty much what it looks like. Then what I doing, and this is a feature that you only have in the Pro Google Workspace accounts, is if you click on more insights, you can actually create labels. So the ones that I actually currently have that I use in my calendar are these ones. So I can just pretty much copy them. And I already know that orange represents recovery meals, yellow deep work. And just something important to mention, these labels only apply to the main calendar, not to the container, but I still like to do that. So if I look into my calendar, I can actually see by color how many hours I spend on which activities each week, which is super, super useful eventually to keep optimizing things. So if I wanted to create the labels, for example, I could just copy what I currently have in my routine. I can just make this a bit smaller and then do the same thing here just to show you what that would look like. So if you go here, time insights here, you can add the labels, and here just recovery. This is what I currently have, what works good for me. So I'm just going to duplicate them. You can just copy them or use your own if you prefer. Then we're going to do, for this, we're going to do, oh, and another thing I do want to do is just to make sure that it represents what I have here. You have to pick a default color for this calendar, because that default color you cannot use for the labels. As you can see right now, the default is blue, but since I'm using that blue for one-on-one client calls and I want this to match that, I'm just going to check the color that I have here. It's this one. So I'm just going to select the same one. So it frees up the blue one for me to use with the call. So I'm just going to keep editing the labels. I'm just going to do deep work is yellow. Then red is exercise or health. Then green is meeting. So this is not one. I want to separate like actual one-on-one client calls, so meetings with actual clients, from meetings with either sales calls or meetings with other people that just come up that are not specifically for like my one-on-one clients or the people that I'm working with. Then this is for specific strategy sessions, like sessions that I'm actually doing strategy, and I can probably gonna create another video walking through what is that, because it's a super powerful framework. Then personal and relationships, or any stuff that is like personal related, relationship related, I use this color. Then one-on-one client calls. Then commute. I also like to know how much time I spend every week commuting. Then reactive work, busy work, and I can explain in a second what each of those mean. And then learning. So reactive work, pretty much replying to emails, Slack, messages, like actually talking to people. And busy work is more like admin stuff, like stuff that is not like deep work or client work, but I don't know, doing my taxes, tracking finances, like stuff like that you have to do sometimes, but it's just like busy work to try to mitigate that as much as possible. So if these are the labels, then I can start labeling here the actual events so that the calendar tells me exactly, right? So a quick shortcut is if you right click on an event, it shows you the label so you can just quickly select it. So all of these are going to be orange. This is going to be strategy. This is going to be orange. This is going to be red. This is going to be orange. This is going to be commute. This is going to be orange. This is going to be commute. This is going to be red. So after labeling it and getting that, this is what it would look like. And something I just realized, just usually, or probably just for a bit of a more clarity, I would just separate this into like dinner, prep, and next day, just like this, and then have like relationships here to actually separate it. And then just do this, and then just do every weekday. So that's pretty much what it would look like. And then, I mean, an important thing is adjust the working hours. I think in the example of the video where I was like showing people how I set it up, I set this up. But if I'm actually going to put here the time that I start working until the time that I stop working, I would do 5:30 a.m. to, 7? Let's just do 5:45. Well, 5:30 doesn't allow you to do 45. Then to, let's just say 8. And then from 10 to 7. So that way it's adjusted. There we go. And then I'm going to copy to all. And that way I have the block where I pretty much am working from 5:30 to, let's just say 7:45, but I just used 8 because it doesn't allow me to do 45 intervals, and then from 10 till 7. So that way I can see that the remaining time that I have this week yet to allocate based on the working hours is like 42 hours in total, right? If that's what I'm using. So if I start like, for example, putting here something that is script, YouTube video, and I make this yellow, it automatically takes time from here and adds it here. So at the end of the week, once you have everything like fully mapped out and you have like your like client meeting, for example, and I would make this blue. Once you have your calendar fully mapped out every single week, you can see clearly how many hours you're spending on which thing. So that's pretty much what the labels are for and how I use it to set it up. So this is what the calendar looks like once I'm done labeling everything. As I said, the open spaces that I have here are in the no meetings days, deep work blocks, and in the meetings days, meetings, blocks for meetings. So I've actually toggled on the container, and that's what this is super useful for, and why I like to do this in a container is so that I can see that this is actually referencing meeting and like client work, and this is referencing deep work without blocking this from the actual Calendly, for example. And I just want to, as I said in every strategy session, and I'm going to create a separate video on how I do those things and how I actually map out everything that I'm going to work on a week so that I fill up all of these slots, what that looks like, so that each week I end up having something like calendar that is just like full, and I know exactly what I'm going to be doing every single day at every single moment. And just something that I wanted to share here, let me just remove my face to show you. So if you can see here in the bottom right corner, right now what it says is the remaining time that you have available, right? So this is linked to, if you go to settings, so you define here what are going to be your working hours, which is why I recommend setting this up. So pretty much you set up the working hours, and then what this tells you is right now all of the blocks that you have left or available if from the working hours that you set. So for example, if I fill something up here and I just say that edit YouTube video, and I want to turn this into a deep work. So as soon as I save it, as you can see, this went from 39 left to 37. And of course the deep work increased. So that's why I recommend having the labels. It's super useful. So then if, just to show you real quick an example, I'm just going to make this a recurring event every weekday. So it automatically, as you can see, the deep work hours went to 10, and it's like light shows me, like brightens up what those look like. And it tells me how many hours I have remaining based on the workflow. And just to show you, if we duplicate this, let's just do this Thursday Thursday, Tuesday, and Saturday, and then we just move it here just to show you what that would look like this and following events. Actually, it was the other one. Let's move this one here, move this one back. So you can see how this starts like filling up. And then if you have meetings with clients, let's just say all of this is like client meetings. So just for a quick example of what a full week would look like, and this would probably be what my calendar is going to look like once I'm at full capacity currently. This is what it's going to look like, including the breaks here already, and having the time insights, super useful, because once the week is full, you can actually see how much time you're spending in like recovery stuff, which for me is just everything that is like either meals or recovery related, breaks, showering, changing, lunch, dinner, prepping, sleep, all those things, right? In deep work, in exercise, working out, in meetings. Right now I don't have any one-off meetings, just left everything as if it was like one-on-one, but there's probably going to be a combination of one-on-one and meetings in this blocks where it says client calls, strategy, personal. Like you can literally see how you're spending all of your time, and as you can see right now, there's no remaining time left from the working hours because all of it is filled out. But if I, for example, delete this, just this event, it's going to tell me that I have two and a half hours open from all of the working hours that I decided or that I said that I was going to work. So yeah, pretty much every time that you start filling up your week, this is what it's going to look like. So that's a process that I follow. But again, right now, this is my container. So pretty much I just have to finish in my actual calendar, migrating this, and like I'm going to adapt it to like the actual client calls I already have booked with the current clients that I have. And then it's just going to be assigning what each of the deep work blocks is going to look like. But then what this allows me to do is now I know that during every week right now I have, and I can think in terms of like in deep work blocks, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I have 11 deep work blocks throughout the entire week. And these are like 2-hour long deep work blocks. So I have the 6, let's just say from Monday till Saturday, and then I have the 4 between Tuesday and Thursday, so that's 10, and then another one on Saturday. And I'm potentially gonna add one more on Sunday just for the short term. I want to do a 100-day push and just pretty much every single day follow the rule of 100 and produce 100 minutes worth of content. So let's just say that I also add this here. So that would mean that I'm going to have 12 deep work blocks every single week. And then it's easy for me to then just think, oh, how am I going to use those blocks, right? So right now I went through a season of just building the program. It's been like 7 months since I stopped working as a CSM, and I've just been working on the back end. I did like a beta test. I've been working with, it's been like 10 clients in total right now. And it's been like different like cohorts that I've been running this with. So I had 5 people first, tested a bunch of things, tweaked things based on what I saw in terms of what works, what doesn't work, and who it works better for. So the goal for this entire process during the last 7 months was to identify who is the avatar that we can provide the most amount of value in the shortest amount of time, and also what is a process that we need to do and build in order to give them those outputs or the best outputs, right? So that's what I did pretty much. And now I'm at a stage where, like, after 7 months of working the backend, I now have to shift my focus into front-end activities because the program is ready. We're officially launching soon, which is why I'm restructuring my routine. So a lot of these deep work blocks, especially I think 7 of them are going to go into like lead generating activities, which is going to be just posting content pretty much. And yeah, just lead generation or advertising activities. And then the rest, so that's 7 out of the 12 that we have right now. And then the other 5 that are actually labeled as deep work blocks are going to go into still keep improving the program. There's a lot of backend work that we do for our clients, which a lot of that still happens like during this, like this blocks that say meetings and client work is not just meetings. Like we still have a good enough buffer, a good enough amount of time here to do actual client work that it's not just being on meeting spot, because right now I haven't defined the actual slots for the calls yet. That's why I'm just leaving this as a huge block, but there's still time on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday that we're doing like work for the clients on the back end. But this is more just like optimizing the actual program. So we have 7 blocks for front end, and then 5 blocks right now deep work for backend, plus there's going to be probably like another 3 blocks here, like 1 block here, 1 block here, 1 block here in total. So like at least 2 hours each of these days of like actual client work, which could also be considered backend that I'm not going to be on meetings. So let's just say another 3 deep work blocks. So it's going to be a total of like the 5 here. So it's going to be like 8 blocks for client work and 7 blocks for front-end activities, and the rest just going to be on being on meetings with clients. But again, it's just been 7 months that literally 90% of the work that I had been doing has been on back-end stuff. So, and we have a pretty solid system right now. So now we're shifting the focus towards doing that. So that's how I like to think about it. I know that right now, before I finalize defining the actual times for the calls. It's just, okay, let's just say that I know for a fact that I have 12 deep work blocks, right? How am I going to use them? I know that first thing in the morning, right now, the priority is going to be to make sure that we are posting content consistently, because we have a very solid structure right now and system for the program. But then still, Tuesdays, Thursdays, there are no meetings, and Saturdays, I'm working really hard or heavy on also on the backend, still keep optimizing it. So I know that, yeah, I'm spending 7 deep work blocks or investing 7 deep work blocks in this thing, and then I start getting better and better. Like right now, I know that it takes me usually like 1 full deep work block to script a video, depending on the video. And then I can record all of the videos if I'm going to be posting, for example, 3 a week, which is what I'm going to start testing. Then it takes me, I know I can record the 3 of them in just one go. And then it takes me like 2 blocks to edit and schedule them and post them and then just repurpose. So that's where the 7 deep work blocks are going to go. And the cool thing is that when you have a system like this instruction, you start applying it, it's very easy to then identify, oh, I realized that I became better in scripting and it's now taking me half a deep work block. So you start optimizing and then you know, oh, I have this slots available and this is what I can do to optimize for pretty much everything that I'm working on, and just makes it way easier to know these are the constraints, these are the blocks that I have. I am wasting a lot of time in busy work, so let me just hire for that or automate or systematize a process. So it just gives you a lot of like feedback that you can use to eventually make changes. So that's pretty much how I set up my routine. So I said now it's all about migrating it to the actual calendar. Then I'll finish fixing like Calendly to make sure it matches the current availability, and finish just concluding with the current clients, the community, just of course adding the actual meetings that I just didn't want to share here, like the actual meeting with the names. But that's pretty much how I set it up. So this is what my routine is gonna look like. Wake up at 5:30 every single day, first thing in the morning, deep work. Then Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays is client meetings days, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays full deep work. And Saturday is going to look like this, and that's pretty much what I'm going to start doing. So I'm going to start testing it, and then based on the feedback that I get, I'm going to keep optimizing it depending on how things go. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's like you come up with a hypothesis, you test it, and based on the feedback that you get, you start optimizing. But as you can see, I have everything here, like personal, business, and also like health related stuff. Why? Because at the end of the day, using a calendar is a tool that serves a very big purpose. More than just giving clarity, there's a deeper thing that's happening here. It is a very helpful tool because at the end of the day, we are humans, which means that we have limited resources. Limited means that they run out. Resources means time, energy, attention, and money as entrepreneurs. And the whole game of entrepreneurship is how we allocate those resources, which are limited, in the most efficient way to get the most amount of output and waste as little as them as possible. So there's this concept called cognitive load, which is pretty much similar to the RAM in a computer. It's the amount of memory or the amount of information that our brains can process or handle at a specific time, at any given time. And again, that is also limited. So when we have so many things going on, like the to-dos and decisions and stuff that are happening in our brain that are not pre-made decisions, that takes a lot of space or memory from that cognitive load. So then you have less resources remaining for you to use for the actual work. So using something like this, a calendar, and putting as much detail into it as possible works as something that is called a liberating constraint, which is a concept that allows you to reduce cognitive load. And basically a liberating constraint is a principle that you set in place that restricts freedom in one domain or in one dimension, but where that restriction gives you a greater freedom in another dimension or direction that you deem more valuable. So for example, here, I want to make sure that all of the resources that I have, time, energy, and attention, let's just call it the units of resources that are limited. I want to make sure that I use as many of those resources as possible in the work that actually moves the needle forward. But when you're making decisions throughout the day, that takes a lot of resources. That consumes a lot. So if, let's just say, because you didn't make the decision in advance of what you're going to do that day, or what you're going to wear, or where you're going to work, or when are you going to work out, or at which time, like all of those decisions that you start making throughout the day, those take a lot of your resources. So then by the time that you have to actually sit down and do the work and produce highly valuable piece of content, for example, you don't have enough capacity in your brain, or not as much, because you already wasted or invested those resources, or they are taken by all of these things happening on the background. So there's probably, you've heard about the whole thing about decision fatigue, and why people, very successful people like Steve Jobs, for example, like why he used the exact same clothes every single day is because they understood to a very deep level how much of an impact taking decisions or making decisions throughout the day, how much of an impact it has in your cognitive load and how many resources it consumes. And it takes away from the actual work. So you want to reduce as many of those as possible. Just take as many decisions in advance as possible so that you can actually invest all of them in the work that gives you the output. So if I'm putting something like this, a system like a calendar in place that is going to allow me to just flow through my day, I'm just going to go through my day without having to think or without having to make any decisions, then I'm going to have way more resources available to deploy to the actual work that matters. And the thing is that a lot of people think that a calendar like this is super restrictive, but again, you're adding a restriction, in this case, in the calendar, like a limitation in one domain, but that restriction gives you way more freedom on a different domain. So it's like an exchange. And also, first of all, it's like, this is way more freeing than what most people think. It's way more liberating. It also has a lot of flexibility. If you haven't ever tested this before, highly recommend you test something like this, where you have like your structure, and at the end of the day, you still have the ability to just move stuff around and be flexible if things come up. So this is how I set up my routine. This is going to be the routine that I'm going to start testing again in this new season, and I'm going to be reviewing it every single week, doing my strategy sessions and making adjustments based on the things that happened that week and every day. And if there's anything that needs changing, I'm just going to start doing that based on the feedback that I get. So that's how I build a routine, and that's what I'm going to start testing, this current routine, and optimizing it each week, and just documenting my journey as I start actually using it, and just sharing the output that I am able to get by following this. So that's the process that I follow to set up my routine. As I said before, if you want to see how to actually set up Google Calendar in the right way, you have the right settings to maximize something like this, check this video that I'm also going to leave the link in the description below, that I just did a full walkthrough on how to set up Google Calendar. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Eduardo Lew, and I help online coaches scale their businesses profitably without burning out. The goal is simple: help coaches maximize the return on every dollar, hour, and ounce of energy that they invest in their business. And we do that by installing profit and performance systems, execution frameworks, and providing one-on-one implementation support so they can keep more money, work fewer hours, and maximize their outputs. I am a certified peak performance coach recognized by the International Coaching Federation, a profit-first professional, and a Fix This Next advisor with over 5 years of experience and more than 3,000 hours of coaching. I've had the privilege of working with more than 400 online founders across the globe, from 6 and 7-figure entrepreneurs in multiple niches to internal roles inside fast-growing companies. I've led the back-end operations and client success for a 7-figure info product business doing more than 200K per month with just a team of 6 members, managing over 200 clients myself. And I've also led an appointment setting team that booked more than 30 qualified calls per week and helped increase the company's revenue by 600%. And if you're an online coach serious about building a profitable, high-performing business without burning yourself to the ground, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. I'm going to be sharing actionable strategies to help you increase profit, boost performance, and ensure that none of your resources are wasted, while also documenting my own journey, scaling my company, and sharing the lessons along the way. Thank you for your time, energy, and attention, and I'll see you in the next one.